Welcome to BIV Today. I'm reporter Tyler Orton, and it was almost exactly 2 years ago that we saw the launch of the Vancouver Titans. It's an esports franchise right here on the West Coast. High-profile names like the Aquilinis count themselves among the investors in these gamers that are battling it out in the Overwatch League. And now, this month, the Vancouver Economic Commission has just released a new report examining the city's prospects at becoming a major hub for this emerging trend in gaming. With us today is Shawn Caldera. He is the VEC's esports coordinator. Shawn, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me, Tyler.
So I think some folks out there that might just conflate esports with gaming. How would you, though, describe esports to anyone not really in the know at this point?
Yeah, for sure. So, the worlds between traditional sports and emerging sports such as esports, it may be a little hard to connect the dots on saying what's the difference between gaming and esports. It's much like the difference between, let's go play catch with a football, or, I'm going to go make a career being a linebacker. The same thing in gaming, right? I can game with you on any game of your choice, and we can have some fun, chat online, make a whole little thing about it and make it an entertaining time. But the moment you introduce more competitive edge to it, you introduce sponsorships, career prospect, money, that's when it becomes esports. And one thing I didn't mention, that is integral for an esport to be an esport, is to have these huge organic grassroots communities that follow the competitive growth of it. So much like any traditional sport out there, whether it be, ultimate frisbee to, basketball to soccer, they all have their niche casual markets. And those could be considered what you call the casual gamer, which is like the 95% of the market that plays video games. And harder cores, or the people who want to be creating that career, that's what the esports can be conflated to, could be equated to, actually, is those more competitive professional people.
I'm thinking back to, say, League of Legends at Pacific Coliseum or the International Dota 2 at Rogers. That was a few years ago. We're actually able to fill arenas here of people that want to go and watch this and watch people compete in gaming, right?
Well, and that's the whole thing. Yeah, it's become such an, I wouldn't say an overnight sensation, but one of the quickest, like the fastest growing industries of our time, has been esports, and a big part of it has been the esports tourism aspect of it, and the event aspect. Prior to the ongoing health crisis, we were seeing a lot of Vancouver dipping its toes into it, not just with the Dota 2 international tournament that came in, but with the North American League Championship Series in 2017. And those were both arena selling events. People from all around the world coming to Vancouver to watch people play a video game, for some big, big money, for some amazing views, and to grow their community further.
Well, let's talk about it. You guys have a new report out, just came out last week. And what is it going to take to make Vancouver like a big global hub in esports?
Well, that's the thing, Tyler, is that we have, I'm a Richmond born, a guy. I've spent most of my childhood and my young adulthood in Vancouver. But I've been all across the province. And so the thing that sets Vancouver apart from not only other cities in the province, but I think other cities in Canada to become the leading global esports hub for this country, is that it has all the moving parts, all the right parts right now. Any aspect, from both the scholastic to the business side to the investment scape to the in that report, we list all those functioning levers that are needed for an ecosystem to sustain itself and to grow. And Vancouver has it. The next step, though, is to bring them all together and have them talking even more than now. Right now it's been that early stage of saying, hey, we're making this report and we need your input. We need to understand what's going on. The next step is that call to action, as outlined a few times in the report. There's different calls to action, but actually actuating on that and having these groups start seeing where they can work together, where their priorities and objectives line up, and taking a look at also what other successful esports cities are doing. And so that big thing is all the ingredients are there. Now we just have to, bake that cake.
So one of the things that you guys note here in the report, though, is that we can try to make the local ecosystem around esports a little bit more cohesive. What would that entail?
Yeah, so cohesiveness of the esports ecosystem is dependent on a few things. A big part is the communication between groups, and by groups, I mean different regions. So even the difference between Burnaby's esports scene is different than Richmond's esports scene, is different than Metro Vancouver's esports scene. And in order for cohesion to happen, all those different scenes need to be communicating at a very frequent pace, because if one group is doing an event and another group's doing an event and they haven't talked and they line up on the same day, it's almost like there's a little bit of this cannibalism that happens for a market. And so that's very frequent, not in BC, but anywhere and around the world. You will have these grassroots esports stuff in these communities and large events happen on the same day. And so for cohesion, it's going to be that communicative process where these regions are talking to each other and seeing how they can complement each other best. So that's from that kind of community or region to region communication. Within regions, there has to be a lot of understanding of what everyone's strengths are, because right now you may have an event organizer who wants to throw an ambitious tournament, and they may not know that Vancouver is home to events platforms like Pepper or Battlefy, which can manage these large scale events, and that still happens where they end up utilizing either platforms that aren't within our ecosystem, or they kind of flounder and get lost. And so I think that cohesion is also that interregional, or that the interregional communication, or rather the inter-ecosystem communication, where these groups are understanding what they're good at, and then they're able to say, okay, I'm good at this, you're good at that, how can we build something better together? And the last thing is also understanding what the future is going to need, right? A lot of people get into esports thinking, okay, I'm going to just get into this, but then they realize there's so much that goes into esports. Either you're not just playing a game, right? You could be building content, you could be organizing a team like the Vancouver Titans, you could be going into it from the investment side, you could be going into it from the tech side. And so part of that cohesion is also making the public aware of the opportunities that esports provides. It's not just us getting into this report and saying, hey, just play more video games. It's more so, take a look at this emerging industry that is tied to a video game or multiple video games that are extremely popular. But it's more than that. It's to approach it as a tech kind of focus, and taking a look at where all these verticals from other industries can feed into esports.
Okay, so it seems like an obvious question, but what are some of the benefits if Vancouver kind of pursues a strategy and really tries to become more of that global hub in terms of esports?
Yeah, I think benefits right now are, with the health crisis we have right now. I think one of the biggest things is our talent, increasing. We're in an increasingly digital era. We're in an increasingly online world. I mean, that's something you hear everyone say, but it is very true, right? Where you have more and more people utilizing an online community or trying to engage with online groups, education and teaching going into that realm. And what's going to happen is that if we focus more on esports and acceptance of it, and rather the legitimization of it in various levels, we're going to start seeing more, I guess, tech literate individuals who are able to grow their skills within an industry they like. And I'm mainly aiming this as at the younger audiences, right? They log into Twitch, they're on social media platforms, they're engaging and playing these games, and they're building a ton of skills. As I said, either from broadcast or tech, just because it's related to video games. I'll give you a quick example, right? It's like content creators or people who broadcast on platforms such as Twitch and YouTube. A lot of their skills are self-taught, and a lot of these skills are broadcast skills that can be taken easily into other broadcast areas, such as journalism or such as news production and stuff like that, which are markets that are trying to pivot and be future proofed, right? And so that's just a very close to home example of how one of the benefits of increasing the talent pipeline. Other benefits for Vancouver for a post health crisis kind of world is that with us taking action now, as we come out of COVID, we're going to be able to engage publishers who make these esports titles and say, hey, listen, we've done this work. Now we're ready to host events. We're ready to reopen things again, and we're better prepped than other cities. And this report's a big part of it because, excuse me, it shows the level of support we have from our government to kind of corner the market from that kind of snake. So that benefit of increased tourism post health crisis, having events, again, live events that are both benefiting our local market and enticing international markets to come in. And I think one of the third big benefits, I think, in the top of my head right now, is the fact that we're going to be able to see just a lot of the talent and businesses here already in Vancouver be able to be marketed at a world at a large, like a world stage, right now there's so many companies. There's like, there seems to be an esports company that pops up almost on a weekly basis in Vancouver.
I've been getting the press releases. I believe you. Yes.
Yeah, and there's so much hard work that goes into it, right? And I think that a lot of those businesses are run by extremely talented and brilliant minds, but also we notice that there seems to be an age trend where they're quite young, and they may be experts at esports, but they may not be experts at business, at marketing to a domestic or international kind of scale. And so with this report and with the world's kind of eyes on us now as an esports hub, we're going to be able to have access to larger markets than what our businesses were kind of used to. And I think we're going to be able to give them that leg up that they all deserve and the support they deserve.
You mentioned the health crisis. We have the pandemic going on. When I first started covering esports for the paper, I would speak to UBC students that would have like big parties to, watch games go down. I mentioned the arenas. It's very much a communal experience, even though people may not associate that with gaming. How has the pandemic kind of affected the community? Is there still kind of that, I guess, thrill that people are getting? Is it going to just explode that much more when we have mass vaccinations and people can gather again?
Yeah, so like I think, yeah, that there's two parts to that, right? Is that how's it going now and how's it going to go after? So how's it going now? It was interesting. I mean, I never anticipated to live through one of these, but I here we are. And that's the thing. When I started my career in esports, I look back and I realized, last year, like, wow, this is an industry that isn't going to skip a beat, regardless, because during the pandemic, content in esports, the consumption, I forget the percentage, but I believe it nearly like triplicated, doubled. It was nuts. And so that's just from a content perspective on how much people were consuming gaming content, people going to Twitch and YouTube more and more and more. And people were also gaming more too, right? Because what else could you do besides work and spend time with the people already in your household, right? Gaming was a way for people and is still a way for people to connect. We saw games, good example, a game like called Valheim, a survival game, which is almost has some Fortnite aspects to it, but is still largely a survival based game, although not an esport. They launched on February 9th officially, and I think they're already at 3 million users. right?
Oh.
Uh, that's the thing, right? Is that you're able to see communities even for a game that's launched, like 2 weeks ago, kind of develop en masse in just a few weeks. And so that is the level of momentum we see also in other games. And so that's why I think during the pandemic, esports was able to keep on going, is because it didn't, although the communal aspect, the physical event going was hurt, people's desire to continue gaming and to continue getting better at video games, or to continue growing their communities, or to keep on streaming or creating their content or whatever have you, that wasn't hurt by staying at home. In fact, it gave them more time to focus on that. Now, in a post COVID world, I know I touched upon it before, but what's interesting is that we're going to have all these really talented people who spent their time building their esports careers and their businesses and their organizations up. I think it's only going to bode as best as it could. I think it's going to be better than pre-COVID, where we're going to have events where we can rely on local talent so much more. We can have production quality that is even better than before. Tournament organizers who are much more experienced at handling online events, they'll look at a physical event and be like, oh my gosh, now I don't have to depend on an event where someone's internet connection is the common denominator, right? People are actually face to face again, and I can be there. And so I think that it's almost like this online world has been a stress test for what we are capable of doing for the future.
Do you get the sense in that post-COVID world that there's just this pent-up demand for that kind of going into those physical locations, interacting with
Oh yeah.
people like face to face versus, online?
100%. 100%. I mean, that's the thing. If you go into any esports community that has had local grassroots or just any type of local event or physical event, people are counting down the days. They're waiting. They're waiting for it, because a physical event brings the benefits of low latency. It brings the benefits of that face to face. These events are like any other event for any other fan base, right? It's a way to keep that community and those friendships going, and people miss each other. They care about each other, and video games is a way for people to connect with each other. I mean, and even though they may be able to connect online, nothing beats being able to connect with your friends face to face.
I gotta ask, I'm curious, how did you make a career out of esports?
Yeah, so it was funny. It's an interesting origin story. So I was studying biomedical studies up north at UNBC, and then I had an undiagnosed gut tumor that kind of put me out of commission, and so I couldn't really do too much because I was kind of stuck in the medical system, and I was up north, right? I was all the way away from Vancouver, family doctors back home and stuff like that, and so I was thinking, it's a scary moment when your health takes a turn like that, and you don't know what's going on, and you're getting a bunch of answers. And so you think, okay, what's the craziest thing I could do? And this was back in 2015, 2014, actually, when I kind of started getting into esports. And I said, it'd be crazy if I could build something where I physically did not have to be there, or where I physically it wasn't as taxing, because that the effect the tumor was having on my body. And so when we had it removed and came back, cancer free and all that stuff, it kind of gave me that new lease on life, and I realized, what, this is something that's going to be the future, because as people grow into a world where we are focusing more on what we want to be doing with our lives, and utilizing the internet and online communities to benefit and grow our local communities. I saw esports as a way for that to happen, and especially to also inspire the youth. And so that's kind of where I started up north in many years ago, and running tournaments, started creating new programs, and here I am, after a long journey of learning pretty much everything I can in the trade.
You can only pick one. What's your go-to game?
Oh, my
That's a tough one,
go-to,
I know.
yeah, geez. Okay, and as I said, it changes, but my go-to esport is Star Wars Squadrons. There's nothing that beats flying an X-wing and destroying a Imperial Star Destroyer while a bunch of TIE fighters are screeching after you. That it's an amazing experience. I think that's my go-to one.
Well, why don't we leave it off on this? One of the things that the report looks into are other, esports cities, and I'm just wondering, broadly speaking, like what can we learn from those other cities as they pursue their own esports hub sort of status, and how that could possibly be applied to here in Vancouver?
Hmm. I think that one of the biggest things is the mainstream acceptance of esports. Um, and what I mean by that is, yeah, mainstream esports is in the limelight and all that, but from a community standpoint, um, the schools, policymakers, parents, decision makers of all aspects of life are more pro esports, and it's part of it's due to those cities having been in the space for so long. These are cities that have been in esports since the early 2000s. So they've had time to go through all the growing pains that other cities may face. But Vancouver's in a really good position because we know where those cities are now. We're almost in that adolescent phase where have the policymakers like the federal government and groups like the Vancouver Economic Commission supporting esports. We're starting to see more schools get into esports and make it an official league. I think what we can learn now is how do we integrate esports better into our municipal communities? How do we integrate into a provincial body? How do we legitimize it from those ways and make it mirror traditional sports? I think that's what a lot of other cities outside of North America are able to do. That's what leads to their success. And that's what also attracts publishers, because these people who make these games that become esports, they're looking for the communities that support them. And I think if Vancouver can promote itself as a city that says publishers one and all, like we have an amazing we have amazing VR AR ecosystem, we have amazing film industry, our indie games market and games development market from indie to AAA is fantastic. Why can't we just also be a number one esports cluster? We have everything else, and so I think by learning at those few little things that I think Vancouver um, can play catch up with some of the bigger cities, we'll be well on our way to being a lead in esports hub.
Well, I think it's fascinating. I believe you when you say that Vancouver definitely has the potential to pursue this, and it's going to be see it like unfold in the coming years. I'm looking forward to when we're all vaccinated, we can all go out again. I'm with you. There's just this pent up demand for this to explode. So it's going to be great to watch. But for now, Shawn, I just want to thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Tyler. I really appreciate this, and I'm looking forward to growing our esports ecosystem even more.
Well, that is Shawn Caldera. He is the VEC's esports coordinator, and that is it for the show today. But we will be back tomorrow. Until then, you can go to BIV.com for more stories and more interviews there. For now, I'm Tyler Orton, and thank you all for listening.